Developing photos. There are two types of files within a digital camera. There are JPEGs and there's all others. All others being pretty broad because it changes overnight and there's no industry standard. So, in order to understand what the difference of the two file types are, you have to understand that one can be developed and one has a little bit of problems when it gets developed. JPEGs that come out of a camera are pretty much developed in the camera. The other form is called RAW. RAW gets edited after the fact. I like dealing with RAW photos because I like doing the editing of my own photos, namely sharpening, adjusting contrast, brightening up the photo. So, here I have two examples. This is a JPEG image. This is another JPEG image, and here is a RAW image. Okay? They're completely different in the fact that they're different scenes, but let me kind of show you something. Here's the JPEG image. What I'm going to do is try to brighten it up. And you can already see that the JPEG image is got some noise artifacts in it. It's got some things. But basically, let's look at this area right here because it's got a good shadow over here. And I go into develop. I could do some atypical things in here, which is like fill light to brighten up the scene, exposure to brighten up the scene. I'm going to go down here and do some sharpening. But I am starting to get some artifacts in here. There's no doubt about it. Some noise. And I can use some noise reduction to get rid of the noise. And it turns out pretty decent. But that's the extent of what I could do to this JPEG and get away with it. Now, if it was far worse, let's say the one right next to it, for example. Okay, this one, obviously the flash didn't hit or something. So when I go into develop and I go and do the atypical things, like exposure, fill light, go down here to sharpening, and the same noise reduction. Well, we have all kinds of noise now, and the artifacts are just so apparent that I couldn't do enough noise reduction without destroying the photo itself. So now, at this point, it's starting to look more like a painting than anything else. Without noise, things look like an oil painting. Well, let's look at something like this file, for example. Now, this is a RAW file, and the difference here, if I show in Finder, there we go, is an NEF file. Okay, this is commonly known as a Nikon file. All right, well, I'm going to go into develop it and then zoom in. Here, atypical things is exposure. Now, when I expose something, in this instance, I have the sky. And you can see that the sky is getting overblown. Also, when I go over here, I can mouse over and see all the pixels that are going to be destroyed because of my exposure. But because this is RAW, I can go over here and maybe go into recovery and push it over. Now, all the pixels that were going to be destroyed are all better now. I can adjust fill light, I can adjust sharpening, and I can go very obscene with these changes and still get away with it because everything is in the information of the actual shot. Henceforth, RAW. Good and bad, it's all there. Good stuff. So when you're looking at very high dynamic range photos like this, where you have a lot of brightness in the background and a lot of rich darks and everything else, you know, always shoot raw. If you're looking at photographing your kitchen sink, sure, JPEG sometimes, but I would say if you had raw footage of it, you could easily change everything in that also without any harm to the photo itself. So that's the different types, and that is developing in a nutshell. Now let's go on to the next video.